So here's the thing about joining an interstellar exploration crew. They don't tell you about the whole mandatory abandonment on a death world situation until it's too late to back out. Marcus Webb learned this the hard way, standing in the cargo bay of the CSS Determination while Captain Vren explained the concept of a survival assessment protocol, like he was reading from a particularly boring instruction manual. It is standard procedure for all species seeking full council membership, Vren said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence like a broken traffic light. You survive 30 planetary rotations on a Class 9 hostile environment. We monitor from orbit. Very simple. Marcus stared at him. You gonna what now? Abandon you, Kelsa chimed in helpfully. She was the science officer, a mantis-looking alien who seemed way too cheerful about this whole thing. It's really quite fascinating from an anthropological perspective. We've tested over 400 species this way. How many passed? Marcus asked, already knowing he wasn't going to like the answer. 17, Vren said proudly. 17, Marcus repeated flatly. Yes, the others expired within the first week, mostly. Some made it to day 12, which was very impressive. Kelsa tilted her head in what might have been respect for the dead. We have already prepared your memorial plaque. Would you like to see it? I'm sorry, you've already made the plaque? We bulk order them, more efficient. Marcus looked down at the survival kit they'd given him. It contained a thermal blanket, a water filtration straw, a basic first aid kit that looked like it was designed for someone with tentacles, and a protein bar that the label claimed was beef adjacent. He turned it over. The expiration date was 3 years ago. This is murder, Marcus said. You guys know this is just murder with extra steps, right? Vren made a sound that the translation implant interpreted as a dismissive snort. It is tradition. Every species must prove they can survive without technology, without support, using only their natural abilities. It separates the worthy from the weak. My natural ability is building stuff and fixing broken ship engines. You know, things that require tools and not being eaten by whatever nightmare creatures live down there. Kelsa pulled up a holographic display. Planet Epsilon 7 rotated slowly, all purple vegetation and ominous storm systems. Oh, the creatures are not so bad, mostly. The razorbacks are the primary concern. Approximately 3.7 meters tall, excellent sense of smell, retractable claws. They can disembowel prey in under 4 seconds. 4 seconds, that's the selling point you're going with? It is very efficient, Vren agreed. Marcus pinched the bridge of his nose. Okay, let me get this straight. You're dropping me on a planet where the main predator is called a razorback, which sounds like something a heavy metal band would name their tour bus, and you expect me to just, what, make friends with it? No, Kelsa said, confused. We expect you to die, but we will monitor your vitals, so we will know exactly when it happens. Very informative data. You people are insane. Statistically, yes. Our species scores quite high in risk tolerance assessments. Vren walked toward the drop pod, which looked less like a sophisticated piece of equipment and more like a trash can with a parachute. But humanity requested full council membership. This is the requirement. You may refuse, of course. Marcus knew what refusing meant. No membership for Earth, no access to galactic trade routes, no advanced technology sharing, no protection from the dozens of hostile civilizations that thought humans looked tasty. He'd be the guy who doomed humanity because he didn't want to camp on a murder planet for a month. This is the worst job I've ever had, Marcus muttered, climbing into the pod. And I once worked retail during Black Friday. I do not understand that reference, Vren said. You wouldn't. Your species doesn't have capitalism-induced stampedes. Kelsa sealed the pod door, her face appearing in the small window. Remember, 30 rotations. If you survive, you pass. If you don't, your sacrifice will be noted in the council records with appropriate honors. How appropriate are we talking? A full paragraph. Maybe 2 if your death is particularly educational. The pod lurched, and Marcus grabbed the harness straps. Through the window, he could see the cargo bay depressurizing. Vren gave him a formal salute that looked like he was swatting an invisible fly. Good luck, Marcus Webb of Earth. Try not to die immediately. It would be embarrassing for both of us. Yeah. Wouldn't want to be embarrassed while being eaten alive. The pod dropped, and Marcus's stomach attempted to exit through his throat. The last thing he heard before atmospheric entry was Kelsa's voice over the comm system, cheerful as ever. We will begin the death clock now. Current betting pool has you lasting 6 days. I have wagered 8, so please try to exceed expectations. Then the comm cut out. replaced by the sound of the pod shaking apart around him, and Marcus screaming every curse word he knew in 3 different languages. The purple forests of Epsilon 7 rushed up to meet him like an angry fist, and Marcus Webb, maintenance technician and apparently humanity's least likely champion, crashed into his new home with all the grace of a dropped burrito. The pod's parachute failed to deploy properly because of course it did. Marcus hit the ground hard enough to rattle his teeth, rolled down a hill covered in something that looked like purple moss but felt like steel wool, and came to rest in a creek that smelled vaguely of rotting eggs. He lay there for a moment, staring up at the alien sky with its 2 suns, and said to nobody in particular, "I should have been an accountant." Something in the forest roared in response. It sounded hungry. Marcus sighed and reached for his terrible survival kit. Day 1. Great. Just great. The first thing Marcus learned about Epsilon 7 was that everything on this planet had apparently decided that the color purple was the height of fashion. Purple trees, purple grass, purple flowers that released purple pollen that made him sneeze for 20 minutes straight. Even the dirt had a lavender tint to it, which would have been pretty if Marcus wasn't busy trying not to die. The second thing he learned was that his survival training, which consisted of watching half of a YouTube video about camping before the ship left Earth, was catastrophically inadequate. Okay, Marcus said to himself, because talking to himself was better than acknowledging the crushing loneliness and impending doom. Shelter first, then water, then figure out which plants won't kill me if I eat them. He'd managed to drag himself and his pathetic supply kit about 200 meters from the crash site before deciding this was far enough. The pod was smoking gently, which probably meant something important was broken. But that was future Marcus's problem. Present Marcus was busy trying to remember if you were supposed to build a shelter near water or away from water. Near water means animals come to drink, he muttered, wedging branches between 2 purple trees. Away from water means I die of thirst. Fantastic options all around. His shelter, and he was using that term generously, looked like something a depressed bird would reject. 3 branches leaning against each other, covered with broad purple leaves that kept sliding off. It would maybe keep the rain off his head if the rain was very polite and fell straight down. Marcus stepped back to admire his handiwork. Yeah, this'll definitely stop a 12-foot murder lizard. I'm basically a survival expert. That's when he heard it. A sound like someone dragging a refrigerator across a gravel driveway. But the refrigerator was breathing, and the gravel was bones. Marcus froze. Every human instinct from a million years of evolution started screaming the same message. Predator, run, die, bad, no, hell! He turned slowly. The razorback stood at the edge of the clearing, and Marcus's brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Kelce's description of 3.7 meters tall hadn't really captured the visceral horror of the thing. It had the basic body plan of a bear that had been stretched on a rack, covered in scales that looked like they could deflect bullets, and equipped with a head that was 60% teeth. Its eyes, all 6 of them, focused on Marcus with the kind of attention a chef gives a particularly nice steak. Nice dinosaur, Marcus said, his voice climbing about 3 octaves. Good dinosaur. I taste terrible, very gamey, lots of preservatives. The razorback tilted its head, sniffed the air, and made a sound like a garbage disposal trying to eat a saxophone. Marcus did what any reasonable human would do. He ran. Now, running from a predator is generally considered a bad idea by most survival experts, right up there with poking bears and eating random berries. But Marcus's decision-making skills had fully evacuated the building, and his legs were operating on pure panic protocol. He crashed through the purple underbrush, jumped over logs, and discovered that he was in much worse shape than he'd thought. His lungs were burning after about 30 seconds. Behind him, the razorback followed with the casual pace of something that knew it didn't need to hurry. This is stupid, Marcus gasped, scrambling up a rocky incline. This is so stupid. I'm going to die because of bureaucratic tradition. He risked a glance back. The razorback was still following, but it wasn't attacking. It was just there, keeping pace, almost like it was curious. Marcus's desperate brain, starved of oxygen and common sense, had an idea. A terrible idea. An idea so stupid it might actually work because nothing else was working. He stopped running. The razorback stopped too, about 10 meters away. They stared at each other. Marcus's chest heaved. The creature's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, like it was buffering. Okay, Marcus said between gasps. Okay. You're not attacking. Why aren't you attacking? The razorback sat down. It actually sat down, like a dog that had just been told to wait. Its tail, which had spikes along the length of it because, of course it did, thumped against the ground once. Marcus laughed, slightly hysterical. You're kidding me. You're curious, is that it? Another tail thump. You know what? Sure, why not? I'm having a conversation with a giant murder lizard. This is my life now. Marcus slowly reached into his kit and pulled out the beef adjutant protein bar. He unwrapped it, the sound of crinkling plastic absurdly loud in the clearing. The razorback's nostrils flared. You want this? This thing that expired during the last presidential administration? Marcus broke off a piece and tossed it. The razorback caught it midair, chewed once, and swallowed. Then it made a sound that Marcus's brain interpreted as more. Oh, you like the artificial bacon flavor. Of course you do. You're a creature of sophisticated taste. Marcus broke off another piece and tossed it closer. The razorback crept forward, moving with surprising delicacy for something that size, and ate it directly from Marcus's hand. Its tongue was rough, like sandpaper made of sandpaper, and its breath smelled like death's gym bag. But it didn't bite his hand off, which Marcus was counting as a win. You're not so bad, Marcus said, feeling the adrenaline finally start to fade. Bit ugly. Probably have trouble with the ladies. Would definitely fail a dental exam, but you're okay. The razorback lay down, its massive head resting on its front claws. It looked at Marcus with an expression that might have been contentment, or might have been planning the best way to eat him later, hard to tell. Marcus sat down too, his legs finally giving out. They stayed like that for a while, human and apex predator, separated by millions of years of evolution and about 3 meters of purple grass. I'm gonna call you Gerald, Marcus said finally, because you look like a Gerald, and because if I'm gonna die on this stupid planet, I at least want to name the thing that kills me. Gerald made a rumbling sound that vibrated through the ground. Yeah, you're welcome, Marcus said. Now, you gonna eat me, or are we gonna be weird friends? Gerald closed his eyes, apparently deciding that nap time was more important than eating the strange furless creature with the good snacks. Marcus looked up at the alien sky and laughed until his sides hurt. Somewhere in orbit, he imagined Kelsa and Vren watching this on their monitors, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. Day 1, Marcus said to the universe. I made a friend. Check that off the list. Gerald snored, a sound like a chainsaw arguing with a foghorn. Marcus decided he'd worry about shelter later. For now, he had a 12-foot security system that worked for bacon-flavored expired protein bars. Humanity's survival strategy. Befriend the monsters and see what happens. It was the dumbest plan Marcus had ever had. But it was also working. Marcus woke up on day 2 with Gerald's massive head resting on his chest, which was terrifying until he remembered the previous day's events. The razorback was snoring directly into his face, and Marcus had discovered a new smell that could only be described as hot garbage mixed with roadkill and sadness. Okay, buddy, Marcus wheezed, trying to breathe through his mouth. Personal space, that's gonna be lesson 1. Gerald opened one eye, yawned wide enough to showcase a dental situation that would make a dentist weep, and rolled over. Marcus gasped, in fresh air like a drowning man. Right, so we're doing this, we're actually doing this. Marcus pulled out another protein bar, his supplies dwindling faster than he'd planned. Training montage time. Except, real, and with actual consequences. He held up the bar. Gerald's 6 eyes locked onto it with laser focus. Sit, Marcus said, making a downward gesture he vaguely remembered from a dog training show. Gerald stared at him. Sit, come on, butt on ground. Gerald continued staring. You're killing me here, Gerald. Work with me. Marcus physically pushed down on Gerald's haunches, which was like trying to move a car with his bare hands. Gerald, either understanding or just tired of standing, sat down with a thump that shook the ground. Yes. Good, here. Marcus tossed him the protein bar, which Gerald caught and demolished in one bite. Okay, that's like $15 worth of concentrated nutrition you just inhaled, but we're making progress. Over the next few days, Marcus discovered that Gerald was actually kind of dumb. Not can't learn tricks dumb, but more golden retriever energy in a body designed by nightmares dumb. He learned to sit, he learned to stay, mostly. He learned that jumping on Marcus would result in broken Marcus, which meant no more treats, so he stopped doing that. The don't disembowel the human lesson took longer, but they got there eventually. See, the thing about apex predators, Marcus explained to Gerald on day 5 while building a slightly less pathetic shelter, is that you guys usually don't have natural enemies, so you're not wired for caution. You're just confident all the time. It's very golden retriever of you. except you can actually kill me. Gerald, who was serving as a living wall for Marcus's new shelter, made a pleased, rumbling sound. Yeah, you like being useful. I can work with that. Marcus wedged another support beam into place. This shelter was actually decent. 3 walls made of woven branches and purple leaves. 1 wall made of Gerald. The roof was waterproof, mostly. There was even a little fire pit, though Marcus had no idea how to start a fire and was currently just arranging pretty rocks in a circle. The other local predators had taken notice of the strange arrangement and decided to stay away. Gerald marked the territory regularly, which involved a process Marcus tried very hard not to think about. And apparently, Gerald's scent was the Epsilon 7 equivalent of a "keep out monsters within" sign. You know what the best part is? Marcus said, sitting down next to Gerald after finishing the shelter. I have literally no idea what I'm doing, but it's working. I'm like a caveman who accidentally invented agriculture, except instead of wheat, I domesticated a murder machine. Gerald rested his head on Marcus's lap, nearly crushing his legs. Oof, okay. We need to work on gentle. You weigh like 1,000 pounds. By day 8, they had a routine. Marcus would wake up, share his breakfast ration with Gerald, who had developed a disturbing addiction to the beef-adjacent flavor. Then they'd explore the surrounding area, with Gerald serving as both bodyguard and pack mule. Marcus had fashioned a crude harness out of the thermal blanket and some vines, and Gerald wore it with the dignity of a dog wearing a embarrassing sweater. I'm pretty sure this violates several animal rights laws, Marcus said, loading the harness with supplies. But we're on an alien planet, and you're not technically an animal, so I think we're in a legal gray area. Gerald shook himself, nearly throwing Marcus across the clearing. Right. Note to self, secure cargo better. They encountered their first real threat on day 9. A pack of smaller predators, each about the size of a wolf but with too many legs and a concerning number of teeth, surrounded them near a water source. Marcus counted 6 of them, all growling in a frequency that made his bones ache. Gerald, Marcus said quietly, remember how I've been feeding you for over a week? Gerald's head lowered, his scales bristling. Yeah. Now would be a great time to earn that investment. What happened next was educational in the way that watching nature documentaries is educational. Except Marcus was actually there, and couldn't change the channel. Gerard moved with a speed that something his size shouldn't have, all teeth and claws and strategic violence. The pack, scattered within 30 seconds, reconsidered their life choices and never came back. Marcus stood there, holding his makeshift spear, which he hadn't even gotten a chance to use. Okay, good boy, very good boy, extremely effective boy. Gerald trotted back, looking pleased with himself, and presented Marcus with one of the dead pack animals like a cat bringing home a mouse. Oh no. Gerald, that's very thoughtful, but I don't eat raw meat that's still twitching. Marcus's stomach churned. Although, you know what? Protein is protein, and I'm down to my last 3 bars. He looked at the creature. It looked back with dead eyes. This is how vegetarians are made, Marcus muttered, trying to figure out how to field dress something that might not even have the same organs as Earth animals. This exact scenario right here. By day 12, Marcus had accidentally created a functioning ecosystem around his camp. Gerald had claimed a territory of roughly 2 square kilometers. Other predators avoided it. Smaller herbivore 2-pipe creatures had started moving in, apparently deciding that Gerald's protection was worth the risk of proximity to humans. Marcus named them as he saw them. There was Susan, a flying thing that looked like a pterodactyl had a baby with a bat, and that baby had anger issues. She nested in the purple trees and screamed at dawn, which Marcus hated, but she also ate the insect equivalents that tried to bite him, so they had an understanding. Keith was a tunnel-dwelling creature that looked like a worm the size of a subway car. Keith mostly stayed underground, but would occasionally surface near the camp, eat some of the vegetation, and then disappear again. Marcus had no idea what Keith's deal was, but he seemed chill. I'm running a zoo, Marcus said on day 13, watching Susan dive-bomb Keith for no apparent reason while Gerald napped in the sun. I'm a zookeeper on a death world. This is my life now. He pulled out his last protein bar, split it 3 ways, and shared it with Gerald and Susan. Keith didn't get any because Keith ate dirt and seemed happy about it. You know what the funny thing is? Marcus said to his bizarre collection of deadly animals who had somehow become his roommates. I think I'm actually surviving this. Like for real. Gerald's tail thumped approvingly. Yeah, humanity representing. We're pack animals. We make friends, even with things that should definitely eat us. Marcus leaned back against Gerald's side, which was warm from the double suns. Take that, Galactic Council. Marcus Webb is thriving. Susan screeched in what might have been agreement or might have been a declaration of war, hard to tell with Susan. In orbit, Marcus didn't know that Kelsa had just lost a significant amount of money on the betting pool, or that Captain Vren was staring at the monitoring screens with an expression that the translator would have interpreted as confused concern. All Marcus knew was that he had shelter, food, and the galaxy's most dangerous support animals. Day 13. Still alive, still confusing everyone. Exactly as planned. Well, not planned, but he'd take it. Day 15 was when Marcus stopped being a survivor and accidentally became a warlord. Okay, so here's the thing, Marcus said, addressing his growing collection of nightmare creatures like they were attending a morning briefing. We're running low on the good snacks, which means we need to go hunting. Properly. Gerald tilted his head. Susan screeched from her tree. Keith burbled from underground, which Marcus had learned meant he was paying attention. I know, you guys do the hunting, but I've got thumbs and opposable planting skills, so we're gonna do this smart. Marcus had spent the last few days observing the local wildlife patterns, mostly because he had nothing else to do and boredom was a powerful motivator. There's a herd of those big four-legged things about 1 kilometer west. They gather near the water at midday. He'd drawn a map in the dirt with a stick. It was not a good map, but it was his map. Gerald, you're the tank. You go in first, make noise, scare them toward the canyon pass. Susan, you and your murder friends fly overhead, keep them from scattering north. Keith, you do whatever Keith does. Moral support, probably. It was the dumbest hunting strategy ever conceived. It also worked perfectly. The herd panicked exactly as Marcus predicted. Gerald charged in with all the subtlety of a freight train, roaring like the world's angriest lawnmower. Susan and 3 other shriekers that had moved into the area dive-bombed from above, their screeches echoing off the canyon walls. The prey animals, which Marcus had started calling space cows because they were cow-adjacent and he was tired of being creative, stampeded directly into the trap. Marcus, armed with a sharpened stick and unrealistic confidence, managed to take down one of the smaller ones. Well, takedown was generous. He poked it, it tripped. Gerald finished the job. Team effort. And that's how Earth does it, Marcus shouted to the sky, adrenaline pumping. Cooperation and strategic thinking. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're pack hunters with planning skills. Gerald dragged the space cow back to camp, looking extremely proud of himself. Over the next week, Marcus's operation expanded in ways he hadn't anticipated. More shriekers joined Susan's flock, apparently deciding that following the weird hairless thing led to easy meals. A second razorback showed up, which was terrifying until Gerald established dominance, and Marcus named her Patricia. Patricia was smaller than Gerald, but meaner, which balanced things out. Keith had apparently told his tunnelworm friends about the arrangement, because 3 more Keith-sized creatures emerged and started terraforming the area around camp. They ate the invasive purple plants that made Marcus sneeze and left behind soil that was actually useful for growing things. Not that Marcus was growing anything, but he appreciated the option. I'm not running a zoo anymore, Marcus realized on day 22, looking at his expanded territory. I'm running a compound. A weird, cross-species commune based on snacks and mutual benefit. He'd started naming everything, because humans need to name things to feel connected to them. There was Gerald and Patricia the Razorbacks, Susan and her Shrieker Squadron, which he called the Screaming Susans. The Keith Collective, all named Keith because Marcus couldn't tell them apart and they didn't seem to mind. A family of smaller scavengers he called the Garbage Boys. Even the space cows that grazed nearby had a name, the Snack Herd, because Marcus had given up on dignity around day 16. The Predator hierarchy had reorganized itself around Marcus's camp. Gerald and Patricia were the apex. The Shriekers controlled the air, the Keiths controlled underground, and Marcus, somehow, controlled all of them through a combination of food distribution, primitive psychology, and sheer audacity. You know what's crazy? Marcus said to Gerald on day 25, watching the sunset turn the purple landscape into something almost beautiful. I'm actually good at this. Like I found my calling. Who knew my purpose in life was to be a monster rancher on a death world? Gerald, who was busy grooming Patricia while she pretended not to enjoy it, made a sound that Marcus had learned meant, "Shut up, I'm busy." Yeah, you've got a lady friend now, I get it. I'm happy for you. Marcus pulled out his second-to-last protein bar, did some math, and realized he could make it stretch to day 30 if he supplemented with the local food that hadn't killed him yet. "We're gonna make it, buddy. 5 more days and we can tell the Galactic Council exactly where they can shove their survival assessment." In the distance, one of the Keiths erupted from the ground, ate a predator that had been stupid enough to enter the territory, and disappeared again. "Keith, that was gross but efficient," Marcus called out. "Good job." A rumble from underground suggested Keith appreciated the feedback. Marcus looked at his bizarre kingdom, the shelter that had evolved from a sad lean-to into an actual structure, the organized hunting grounds, the creatures that had somehow become his found family, the territory that was safer than most suburban neighborhoods. "I domesticated the apex predators," he said, laughing at the absurdity of it. "I actually did it, and then I just kept going." Patricia headbutted Gerald affectionately, nearly knocking him over. "Yeah, you guys are disgustingly cute for living murder machines." Day 25. Marcus Webb, former maintenance technician, current cryptid of Epsilon 7, leading a multi-species alliance through charisma, snacks, and the power of giving things ridiculous names. Somewhere in orbit, the Galactic Council was having a collective crisis. Down on the surface, Marcus was having the time of his life. 5 more days, he told his assembled creatures. "Then we see if I can convince them to let me keep you guys." Gerald's tail thumped, Susan screeched approval. Keith did whatever Keith did underground. The vote was unanimous. They were a package deal now. Captain Vren stared at the monitoring screen like it had personally insulted his ancestors. "Explain to me again why the human is not dead." "He befriended a razorback on day 1, Kelsa said, her mandibles clicking nervously. She'd lost a lot of money on the betting pool and was not handling it well. "Then he befriended another one, and also several shriekers, and the tunnel worms, and approximately 47 other organisms of varying lethality. This is not possible." "And yet," Kelsa gestured at the screen, where Marcus was currently teaching Patricia to play fetch with a rock. Patricia, a creature that had killed 3 fully armed explorers last year, was wagging her tail. "The human appears to have established a pack hierarchy with himself at the center." Vren's communication implant chirped. "Incoming call from the Galactic Council, multiple members." He closed all 4 eyes and accepted. The screen split into 6 panels, each showing a different council representative. Administrator Grix, a floating jellyfish thing, pulsed with agitation. "Captain Vren, we have been monitoring the human survival assessment." "As have I, Administrator." "He's created an army," said Counselor Thek, who looked like a rock with anger issues. "A multi-species combat force, centered around apex predators. This was not in the parameters." "The parameters were to survive," Vren said carefully. "The human is surviving. CPA is thriving." Grix's tentacles waved frantically. "Look at this footage. He has organized hunting parties. He has established territory. He has named them. Do you understand what naming means for pack-bonding species?" On the screen, Marcus was splitting some kind of meat between Gerald, Patricia, and the Shriekers while explaining something that the audio couldn't quite pick up. Whatever he said made Gerald make the rumbling sound that the xenobiologist had classified as contentment. "The razorback appears to be purring," Kelsa observed. "I did not know they could do that." "We cannot." Tex slammed something that might have been a fist. "That is the point. Razorbacks are solitary ambush predators, with documented aggression toward all other species. They do not purr, they do not fetch, they do not form cooperative hunting groups." "Well," Vren said slowly, "this one does." Another counselor, Yarvex of the Crystalline Collective, chimed in with a voice like breaking glass. "We need to discuss intervention. This human is violating the spirit of the assessment." "How?" Vren was genuinely curious now. "He used natural abilities, human abilities. Pack bonding, social hierarchy establishment, resource distribution. These are all natural human behaviors." "Natural human behaviors do not include domesticating death worlds." Grix pulsed red. "We have been conducting survival assessments for 3,000 cycles. No species has ever done this. They survive by hiding, by running, by enduring, not by recruiting the local wildlife as allies." Kelsa pulled up historical data. "Actually, looking at Earth's history, this is very on-brand for humans. They domesticated wolves into dogs, they domesticated wildcats, they domesticated horses, cattle, chickens. There is evidence they tried to domesticate bears and it only failed because bears are not food-motivated enough." Gerald is very food-motivated, Vryn observed, watching the Razorback devour another offering from Marcus. That is not helping, Grix said. On screen, Marcus had apparently started training the Shriekers to scout. He was using hand signals. The Shriekers were responding. One of them landed on his shoulder, and instead of removing his head, it just sat there while Marcus fed it something. This is unprecedented, Counselor Thek said, quieter now. Genuinely unprecedented. Should we intervene? Yarvex asked. End the assessment early. The council fell silent, watching Marcus laugh at something Gerald did. Patricia headbutted him affectionately, nearly knocking him over. The tunnel worms had surfaced and were arranged around the camp like living fortifications. If we intervene, Vryn said slowly, we admit the assessment failed, that our ancient tradition of testing species through survival trials is flawed. Or, Kelsa added, we admit that humans are significantly more terrifying than we anticipated. A species that can land on a hostile world and just make friends with the things trying to eat them. Grix's tentacles drooped. How long until pickup? 5 rotations, Ven said. And if he asks to keep them? Everyone looked at each other. No one had an answer for that. On the screen, Marcus had fallen asleep using Gerald as a pillow, while Patricia stood guard and the Shriekers nested overhead. The tunnel worms had created a perimeter. Even the smaller scavengers were arranged in what could only be described as a protective formation. He made a family, Kelsa said softly. In 30 days, on a death world, he made a family. That is the most human thing I have ever heard, Vryn admitted. So what do we do? Administrator Grix asked. Vryn watched Marcus sleep peacefully, surrounded by creatures that should have killed him a dozen times over, and tried to imagine explaining this to the full council. We pick him up in 5 days, he said finally. We pass him on the assessment because technically he met all the criteria, and then we never, ever assign humans to survival assessments again. Agreed, said the council in unison. And if he asks to keep the Razorback? Yarvex pressed. Vryn thought about Gerald, who was gently adjusting his position so Marcus wouldn't get a crick in his neck, and sighed deeply. We are going to have so much paperwork. Day 30. Marcus woke up to find Gerald staring at the sky with all 6 eyes, a low rumble building in his chest. Patricia was alert too, her scales bristling. The Shriekers had taken flight, circling overhead in agitated patterns. Yeah, I know guys, Marcus said, standing up and brushing purple dirt off his clothes, which were now more holes than fabric. They're coming back today, end of the assessment period. Gerald made a questioning sound, head tilting. Assessment. The thing where they abandoned me here to see if I'd die. Marcus scratched behind Gerald's ear ridge, which he'd discovered the Razorback loved. Surprise? I didn't. We showed him. The CSS determination descended through the atmosphere with all the grace of a falling refrigerator, landing in the clearing that Marcus had spent 3 days preparing. He'd even made a welcome sign out of woven purple branches that said, "Still alive jerks," because he'd had time and opinions. The cargo ramp lowered. Captain Vryn appeared first, followed by Kelsa and what looked like a full security team. They were armed. Marcus noticed. They were armed. Hey guys, Marcus waved. Miss me? Vryn stopped at the bottom of the ramp, all 4 eyes fixed on Gerald, who was standing protectively behind Marcus. Marcus Webb, you have survived. Yeah, funny how that works when you have friends. Marcus gestured to his assembled crew. Oh, where are my manners? This is Gerald, that's Patricia, the Shriekers are the Screaming Suzannes, the big underground guys are all named Keith, and various others who are camera-shy. Kelsa's mandibles were clicking so fast they blurred. You domesticated them. You actually domesticated them? Domesticated is a strong word. We have an understanding. I provide strategic thinking and snacks. They provide security and hunting assistance. It's very symbiotic. Gerald rumbled agreement and several of the security team took a step back. Also, Gerald liked belly rubs, but that took 2 weeks to establish. Vryn looked like he was experiencing several emotions at once and his translator couldn't keep up. You have passed the assessment. Oh good. I was worried that thriving on a death world wouldn't count. Marcus's sarcasm was thick enough to cut. So what's with the guns? We having a problem here? No problem, Vryn said quickly. Standard procedure for extraction from hostile environments. Hostile? Gerald's a sweetheart. Aren't you, buddy? Marcus patted Gerald's flank, which was like patting a tank. Tell them you're not hostile. Gerald, reading the room with more emotional intelligence than Marcus expected, sat down and did his best impression of looking non-threatening. This was difficult when you're a 12-foot apex predator, but he tried. Patricia joined him. The Shriekers landed and tucked their wings in. The security team looked at each other, confused. Right, Vren said, his voice strained. Well, the council has reviewed your performance and granted humanity full membership status. Congratulations. Sweet. Do I get a certificate or something? You get not being stranded on a death world anymore, Kelsa said. That is the prize. Marcus looked back at his camp, at the shelter he'd built, at the territory he'd claimed, at the creatures that had become something more than survival tools. Gerald nudged his shoulder with his massive head. So here's the thing, Marcus said. I want to keep Gerald. The silence was deafening. A shrieker screeched nervously. Absolutely not, Vren said. Why not? We're bonded, look at him. He's a good boy. Gerald on cue did the rumbling purr thing. See? He likes me. I like him. It's a whole situation. He is an apex predator from a Class 9 death world. So? Humans domesticated wolves. This is basically the same thing. Wolves did not weigh 2 tons and have retractable claws designed for disemboweling prey. Marcus crossed his arms. You said I passed the assessment using my natural human abilities, right? Well, pack bonding is a natural human ability. So technically, Gerald is part of my success. You can't separate us now, that would be cruel. Kelsa made a sound that the translator interpreted as, you have got to be kidding me. The paperwork alone, Vren muttered. The import regulations, the liability insurance. The council will never approve this. Then I'll stay here, Marcus shrugged. Gerald, Patricia, the Susans, the Keiths, we've got a good thing going. 5 more months and this place will basically be a farm. You cannot stay here. Watch me. Gerald stood up, and the security team immediately raised their weapons. Patricia growled. The Shriekers took flight. The Keiths rumbled underground, making the earth shake. Stand down, Vren shouted at his security team, then to Marcus. Call off your creatures. Our creatures don't like the guns, Marcus said calmly. Maybe put those away and we can discuss this like civilized beings. It was a standoff, human and alien staring at each other while the local wildlife vibrated with protective aggression. Finally, Vren's shoulders slumped. I will submit the request to the council. The Razorback will need to undergo health screenings, behavioral assessments, and approximately 400 different certifications before being cleared for transport. Gerald's very healthy and well-behaved mostly. This is insane, Kelsa said. This is humanity, Vren corrected. We should have seen this coming. Marcus grinned. So we good? We are many things. Good is not one of them. Vren turned back to the ship. Load the human and his pet. Carefully. Very carefully. Gerald followed Marcus up the ramp, ducking his massive head to fit through the cargo bay door. Patricia tried to follow. Marcus had to explain that she needed to stay and watch the territory. She did not take it well, but eventually settled when Gerald rumbled something at her. I'll visit, Marcus promised. I'll figure something out. As the ship lifted off, Marcus looked out the window at the purple landscape, at Patricia and the Susans and the Keiths, at the camp that had been his home for 30 days. You know what the crazy thing is? Marcus said to Gerald, who was trying to figure out why the floor was moving. I actually loved it down there. Is that weird? Gerald, who had no frame of reference for weird, just pressed against Marcus's side. Somewhere in orbit, the full Galactic Council was being briefed on the situation. Arguments were being had, precedents were being cited, regulations were being frantically rewritten. But on the CSS Determination, in the cargo bay, Marcus Webb sat with Gerald and felt pretty good about himself. We did it, buddy, he said. Humanity, yeah. Gerald's tail thumped against the floor, denting it slightly. Outside, the stars wheeled by, indifferent to the fact that humans had just changed the rules again. It was becoming a habit.